I'm vanilla, baby. I'll choke you, but I ain't no killer, baby. She 28, telling me I'm still a baby. I get love in Detroit like Skillet, baby. And the thing about your boy is
I don't like no whips and chains, and you can't tie me down. But you can whip your lovin' on me, whip your lovin' on me.
Young MISSIONARY. He's sharp like barbed wire. She stole my heart, then she got archived. I keep it short with a bitch, Lord Farquaad. All the girls in the front row, all the girls at the barricade, all the girls have been waiting all day. Let your tongue hang out, fuck everything. If you came with a man, let go of his hand. Everybody in the suite kicking up they feet. Stand up, bitch, dance. I see you. And all the guys in the back waiting on the next track. Cut your boy a little slack. It's Young Jack. I'm vanilla, baby. I'll choke you, but I ain't no killer, baby. She 28, telling me I'm still a baby. I get love in Detroit like Skillet, baby. And the thing about your boy.
I read Kim Porter's tell-all book on Sean P. Diddy Combs, so you don't have to, and I'm going to paraphrase it for you. Kim grew up in Georgia, and after high school, she started getting modeling jobs, and she knew that she had to get out of Georgia if she was going to make it big, so she moved to the West Coast, I'm assuming to LA. This is where she met her husband, Al. So he was in the industry, they fell in love, they got married at 19, and she immediately had a child named Quincy. She really loves this guy. It didn't work out, they did get divorced, but they stayed really good friends, and he's someone that's still very near and dear to her. Then she meets Sean Combs while they're both working at the Uptown label. He's starting to be up and coming, but he's not like huge yet, and he is super into her. He's making advances. She's kind of like, all right, he's cool. I think they go on a couple of dates, but it doesn't become serious, no big deal. But then they run into each other at an event, and he's putting on the charm. He's sitting down next to her, and he's like, you look amazing. And she's like, oh my God, thanks. And he's like, we should get dinner. And she's like, no. And then he's like, oh, Kim, I think I'm falling in love with you. And she's like, okay. So then they end up going to dinner. Something must have happened after their first couple of dates, because in the book she says he's begging for a second chance and she gives it to him, but she doesn't say what happened. So then they end up dating for real. Like they're together for like a year and a half at this point. At one point she's referencing how he comes up to her and he's like, please, can you do it for me again? And it's alluding to pegging him. He's like, please, I want you to do that to me again. And she's kind of like, Sean, no, like I don't want to do that again. And then she kind of makes a sly comment because he's like, oh, like I want you to blank me like that again. And then she goes, isn't Clive the one blanking you? Clive Davis, implying that Clive is blanking him, and then he slaps her hard. And before she can even react, he's like on the floor being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. She ends up leaving, and he keeps like sending flowers and gifts to her house, and she's like, no, I don't want anything to do with you. But then they run into each other at an event again. He comes up to her, she's like, get away from me. And then he sits her down and he's like, no, you know I love you, nothing's gonna keep us apart. I love your son, like your son is my son, blah blah blah. And that like gets her, because she's like, okay, he is really good with my son. And so she then turns and looks at him and she's like, okay, let's get coffee. She literally says in the book, what the fuck is wrong with me? Girl, don't blame yourself. Then Sean comes to her house for their like reuniting date. He's got flowers. He's like being super good with the kid. Although she does make a note that like he tapped the kid on the butt, like smacked his butt. Weird. He calls a babysitter for them. They go out. The driver is named Gene, and he's got a weapon on him, and Kim like sees it, and she's kind of like, that's weird. And she says like, I'm gonna see this guy a lot more I'm gonna see this guy Gene a lot more throughout my life. They go out, they have a fun night. I think it kind of involves sexy things. Chapter 5, she says the year passed pretty well. They didn't have any problems, but then Sean is getting into voodoo and he's putting curses on people. Okay. This is where Mary J. Blige enters the chat. So I guess he starts working with her, and then he admits that he's actually hooked up with her. And so Kim gets pissed, but then he suggests, hey, why don't we have a threesome, the three of us? And Kim's kind of like, I mean, she is pretty, I don't know. So they end up having a threesome. She's like, I don't know, like Mary J. Blige is super beautiful. I'm not into women, but exploring my sexuality was enticing, so whatever. Over the years, they brought many other women into their bedroom, so they were kind of like, they were open. One day she comes home and Al, her ex-husband, is at the kitchen table with her boyfriend, Sean, which is super awkward. And she's like, okay, this is weird. And she says, you know, the awkwardness between all of us had passed a long time ago, but it's still weird that the two of them are hanging out in my home, like her ex-husband and her current boyfriend and the father of her son, you know? And then after they've been drinking, Al is kind of like, you know, we've all been together, just like not together. Like we've all been together, but not at the same time. And she's kind of like, the fuck do you mean? And then Sean and him are kind of like encouraging her to have a threesome with them. And she's kind of like, first of all, this is crazy, and also like, what if it goes weird, and like, what about my son? But also, I do kind of love both of you, and like, it could be fun, like, I don't know. So she's like, all right, let's do it. And then as it's happening, it's alluded in the book, it's X'd out, but it's pretty clear, the threesome becomes a twosome between Sean and Al, and she's kind of like, what the fuck? So she freaks out and leaves, and Sean's like, babe, come back, it's like totally cool, like, don't even worry. And you kind of gather that like, maybe this isn't the first time that they've done this. And she's weirded out by this. She couldn't look at him the same for a while. It's strange. And also at this point, she mentions she found a vault where he kept all of his encounters with men on video. Come back for part 2, because that's where Pac and Biggie entered the chat. Part 2, this is where Biggie and Tupac get mentioned. So Biggie has taken over East Coast hip hop, and then Sean is basically orchestrating everything in the industry. Like, he's got people helping write rap lyrics, he's got people helping produce beats, and he's working with people who are like deciding who's gonna be the next it person. And Sean is sleeping with a lot of people, including very powerful men within the industry. She says like the names that are like, they would blow your mind if you knew some of these names, and also a lot of people you've never heard of but that are really important in the industry. She also says he started hosting parties with fancy names, which were basically just a way to have orgies. When she met Tupac, her and Sean were in an open relationship, and she liked Tupac, so they would hook up a lot. Her and Tupac would sleep together. But then one day, things take a turn, because she's hanging out, and Tupac is there, and Sean is there, and he knows that they've hooked up, and he basically turns to Tupac, and he's like, my baby's bad, right? And Tupac's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, she is. And Kim's kind of like, like, and then Sean's like, who do you think is better? Like, who do you think is like better at doing it to her? And Tupac's kind of like, bro, what? And he's like, let's find out, like, who's better. Like, I bet my blank is bigger than yours. And Tupac's like, what the fuck? And Kim's also like, dude, what the fuck? Super disrespectful. And he's like, yeah, let's see right now, like, let's see who can make her blank the fastest. And like, it seemed like Tupac then says like, are you about to take your shit out right now? And like, it's just bad. Kim's pissed because she's like, you're disrespecting me. Tupac's pissed because he's like, first of all, this is awkward. Second of all, I told you 100 times, like, I'm not into you. Sean kept like making advances. Tupac's, I'm not gonna hook up with you, and this is awkward. So he leaves, he's pissed, Kim's pissed. So then things are very contentious between Sean and Tupac. Like, they avoid each other. He's actually now avoiding Kim as well. So like, he wants nothing to do with either of them, and there's just tension between them. She even said like, there was a couple times where it seemed like someone was gonna throw a punch. And then she says one day she walks into the studio in the morning and she overhears the conversation. Sean is having a conversation with who she calls Jimmy the henchman, and what she hears him say is, and I quote, "Pac don't leave that fucking studio alive." And then she says, I don't think I was meant to hear that. So she just continues like she didn't hear that, and she's like, oh, good morning guys, I'm ordering breakfast, what do you want? They place their little orders, like, right? And she definitely heard it. And as this Jimmy guy is leaving the studio, he says to Sean, great, let's make that happen. So like, confirmed. And he says, I'll make the call. I'm going to read this part verbatim because I think it's important. I wasn't in the studio the night Pac survived being shot, thank God. From what I understand, Sean and Chris saw Pac at the studio after he'd been shot and did nothing. The way God works. After being shot, Pac made it to the elevator and tried to escape, but it stopped at the floor that Sean and Chris were on. When the doors opened, they saw him lying on the elevator floor, riddled with bullets. The fact that they didn't call an ambulance, although they saw that Pac was sitting there lying, swimming in a pool of his own blood, would be all the evidence Pac ever needed. He, of course, assumed that they placed the hit, and Tupac is a soldier, but this is not something that will be unanswered. Tupac didn't do well. He lost a testicle, but he survived. She says it was orchestrated, and Sean Puffy Combs was the orchestrator. At this point, she knows she's got to get out. So one night they go to a dinner at a restaurant and it's like really fancy. It's the two of them, it's public. And so she was thinking this would be a good time to break up with him. But as he walks into the restaurant, he's on the phone with someone. She doesn't know who he's on the phone with, but she hears him say this, we're going to release Who Shot Ya now. So they had a song called Who Shot Ya, and he's intentionally releasing it, and it's going to be B.I.G. making the song. Of course they're going to think B.I.G. was talking about Pac. That's the whole point. Nobody would give a fuck about a diss track against LL fucking Cool J. Do you know how much money we're going to make with this kind of rap beef? So he knowingly put the hit on Tupac and then knowingly encouraged a song from B.I.G. that would make it look like it was him that did it, so we can make money off of it. And then she's like, okay, maybe now is not the best time to break up with him. And as he's getting off the phone, he says, we drop that shit tomorrow. There's gonna be blood in the street. Blank, they missed. Pac's alive. Let's capitalize on that shit. When he responds, it's just gonna mean more money. He gets off the phone and she doesn't look very happy, and he's like, what's wrong? And she's like, oh, nothing. But like, she was intimate with Tupac. She liked him. So she's like, this is not good. And he's like, oh, are you sure you're fine? She's like, yeah, but she's like, Sean's not stupid. So she's like pretending that she's cool, but he can tell that something's wrong. So as she's saying like, yeah, I'm fine, he takes her hand and he squeezes it until it hurts. And he says, that's wonderful, because seeing you walk in the office while I was talking about killing that MF and you not saying shit to me had me just a little bit concerned. And he's squeezing her hand so bad that it hurts. She's like, you're hurting me? And then he keeps squeezing and he's like, you're pretending you didn't hear anything was a sign of your loyalty to me, not something I should be concerned about, right? And so she said she had no choice but to say what he wanted. And she was like, yeah. And so he let go and he's like, good. And then he says, remember, I'm the big D. And then he's like, great, let's have wine. And it's at this moment that she realizes she's trapped. Okay. It's at this point she says Sean has a bad temper. He yells sometimes. He's roughed me up a couple of times, but he's never like bruised her. And he's never put a hand on Quincy, her son. She says, at that time, I never thought of him touching Quincy in any way, which makes me nervous for what's to come in this book. And then she's starting to think like, wait, is this all because he's jealous of Tupac? And then she goes on to say, the last time he put his hands on me, it was because I enjoyed Jamie Foxx too much. But she says, well, he enjoyed him too. And he's like, he gets so jealous, like Sean gets so jealous. So then a third person joins them at dinner, and it's Sean Carter. And then she says, the Seans may share a bed together from time to time, but thankfully I was never asked to join. And then Sean Carter, Jay-Z, is like, oh, I thought we were meeting in private. And P. Diddy's like, oh, I wanted to discuss something with her. It's fine. Go ahead. Yada, yada. And then Jay-Z says that it's true. Biggie and Tupac were about to launch their own label together. All I can think about right now is how literally notorious the beef between Tupac and Biggie was. The beef never existed. They were about to start a label together. I remember, bro, what? Diddy's pissed about this. He's like, doesn't anyone have any loyalty? And then Jay-Z's like, well, that's not happening now, right? Because he knows what happened. And then Diddy starts getting suspicious of Jay-Z, and he's like, why are you telling me this? And he's like, Chris is your guy. Like, he brought you on and you're stabbing him in the back. And then Jay-Z was like, first, I'm tired of being his son. I need to come out from under his shadow. And then, like, he's like, okay, I respect that. And then Jay-Z's like, on top of that, this guy's making that move. It should have been with me. Basically, Jay-Z's like, I want a spot. It's about ambition. I want to take his spot. And they have drinks together and kind of agree to be in cahoots together. She then talks about how she meets Kid Data Jones, who was Tupac's fiance, and is like someone in the industry. They become very good friends. And then she meets Kimora. They didn't get jealous of each other. They were truly like girlfriends. She did not become intimate with Kidada. Kimora was too jealous for that. Kidada knew that Kimora, Sean, and her would all hook up. Okay. Kidada and Pac were the greatest couple. They were just cool together, like good vibes. But Pac's shooting and the suspicion surrounding Sean and Jimmy, the vibes between Kidada and I were not always perfect. Then came that night. Award shows weren't anything new for us, but around the time they were getting ready for this award show, Kidada was being a bit off. She asked what's up and she said nothing. And then the day of the event came. Kidada comes over to their table and P. Diddy's like, oh, like Bad Boy's gonna clean up tonight. And she's like, yeah, like they probably will, but like Tupac's gonna win some awards as well. And he's kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then she says, Sean, Tupac thinks you were involved with him getting shot. You two were so close. You need to make this right. And then he's like, why would I have anything to do with it? And she's like, can you blame him? And he's like, hell yeah, I blame him. We had a good thing going, all of us. And then he turned. He's got the balls to blame me for the shooting, blah, 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 blah. He said the way that he could lie through his teeth was like very shocking. Then Kim walks over to the table and says, the whole place is buzzing with the fact that you're sitting here accusing Sean of having Pac shot. Your guys are kind of loud. She's like, everyone knows that Sean was behind it. Because Kidada is the daughter of Quincy Jones, who's huge in the industry, like Sean could not do shit to her basically. So like, if anyone else had said it, she's like, this would have turned into a brawl, but like no one can touch her. And she says to him, you're not safe in the streets, Sean. You think you're untouchable? And then while the girls, so Kim and Kidada go to the bathroom, P. Diddy, there was a picture of a ginger ale on the table that Kidada was drinking. Diddy takes the ginger ale, the pitcher, puts it under the table, and pisses into it. He pees into her ginger ale pitcher. Then he puts it back on the table. And then Kim and Kidada come back from the bathroom. And he's just sitting there watching them and he's making small talk. And he's like, oh, like what songs do you think I'll get awards for? And then Kidada pours herself a drink. Sean's bodyguard comes over to the table. I think he stopped her from drinking as everyone else just sat and watched. So Gene is the bodyguard and he risked getting in trouble with P. Diddy to prevent it, right? Like being like, hey, don't drink that. That's insane. That's actually fucking, that's insane. Next, she's talking about one of their wild nights, one of the infamous parties, right? She's like, it was threesomes, we were swapping partners, our sex life was crazy, but I got to do things with him that I would never get to do with a straight man. And he cared about me. So, you know, it was becoming more and more obvious that he preferred men, but he did care about me. Says she wakes up in the morning and left the bedroom where she was with Jada Pinkett, and Sean happened to be coming out of the bedroom with Blank and Will Smith. Yes, Blank attended the parties from time to time. We don't know who Blank is. I could see him and Will kind of snuggled up in the bed together. I was grateful that I wasn't asked to join. I didn't really like Blank. She wanted to get back home to Quincy before he woke up, but Sean was like, no, let's have a talk. And she says she didn't really have a choice because he was getting more and more violent when he didn't get what he wanted. He didn't really want to fight, so he sat down. And as he's sitting down, this Blank person comes out of the room. Sean's wearing boxers, Blank is butt naked, and Blank addressed them and said, hey, good morning. When he turned around to close the door, there was dried stuff on his back. The person came over, pulled out a chair to sit down next to them. Sean smiling, and he's like, this East Coast West Coast beef is more lucrative than I thought, but it's getting dangerous. And then the other guy, Blank, is like, well, business first thing in the morning, like crazy, you're crazy, like why are we talking business right now? Blank smiles, blah blah blah. He says, I can't protect everybody, especially if someone is no longer going to be on my label. And Blank says, Sean, are you saying what I think you're saying? And then Sean says, it's taxing on my resources to protect people. Someone that isn't 100% on my team can't get 100% of my protection. Then this Blank person says, okay, so to be clear, if something happened to someone on your team and he made quote marks with his fingers, that leaving your label anyway, it would be considered out of your control. And she's like, wait, are they talking about Biggie? Is Sean saying he won't protect Biggie anymore? She says, at this point, I was too young, too naive, too hungover to realize that what they're talking about is not a lack of protection, but a hit. And she's like, where did this come from? The world was about to lose Biggie. At this point, she says to him, because she decides she has to speak up, she's like, but Sean, he hasn't left yet. They're just rumors. Are you really going to let him die because of some rumors? And P. Diddy replies, I know when I'm being betrayed. I'm not killing anyone, but I am not protecting somebody that doesn't have my back 150%. She's like, okay, maybe I can play the money card. And she's like, Sean, he's bringing in so much money. Like, you've put so much money investing into him. Like, are you going to throw that away? He's like, if he leaves, he takes all the money I invested into creating him. But if I can't protect him, something terrible does happen, then the money I would make off of his death would blow away all the money we made so far. And he says, he's worth more to me dead than alive. And then this Blank person says, I get that. A lot of people want him dead too. Without your protection, he doesn't stand a chance in Cali. Biggie is going to die. This is crazy. I dare not say anything else about it. Then P. Diddy walks over to a safe behind a picture, pulls out a bag marked with Blank's name, turns to Blank and says, that's why you're worth your weight in gold. You understand me? Here's something for you to take care of your people. And he's like, I love you, whatever. Okay. And so she leaves. Come back for part 4. Part 4, and before I get into it, a lot of people are saying that people around Kim Porter have come out and said that she did not write this. Some people are saying that it's like unverified. I don't think any of us are ever going to know, and that's why the FBI is doing what they're doing. But what I do want is at least to have the information. Like, even if it's, you know, whether we find out it's true or not, I just wanted to have the information physically accessible. So I'm not sharing this saying that it's true. I'm just sharing it because this is what is in the book. Okay, she's saying at this point, their relationship's not going great. He's put his hands on her like many times, and they're on and off. So one day he calls her and he's like, hey, we've been broken up for a while this time. And then he's like, listen, I don't want anyone to know about my proclivities. And she's like, okay, so you don't want people to know about you being gay? And he like loses it. And then he says to her, when you see this in the news, it's not real. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I'm only doing it for the press. And she's like, doing what? And he's like, she knows what this is. She's just pretending to cover me. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, publicly, I'm going to be dating somebody else, a video girl. And it's to like protect his sexuality, I guess. They get into a huge fight, basically, and she's like, okay, you're gay, and she's like, I'm done with you, and they get off the phone. She said for a while she was happy that Sean was out of her life, the sex parties were getting out of control. Chris is still alive, but she's like worried about him, and then she's at her house one day, and Sean shows up to her house. He's like, are you waiting for someone? She's like, no, and she's like, but you're dating someone, I can fuck whoever I want. He loses his shit, he slams her to the ground, pulls out a big boy weapon, sits it on the end of the table, turns to her calmly, and like points it at her, and she's like, please stop, my son is here, like cut it out. And he's like, you're mine. You don't have a choice in that now. I can't live without you. And she's like, Sean, that's not love. But he's like, bitch, I don't care. And then he says to her, this is just for dramatic effect. I would never actually pow you. If I was going to, no one would ever trace it to me. Do you know how many people I've had to take care of over the years? It would be quiet, something in your food or in your drink, something that would never get back to me. I would never pow you. Do you understand? Dude, if any of this is real, this is insanity. But for him to be arrested the way that he is, they must have stuff on him. Like this, what we're about to find out about this man, bro. After this, he leaves. He's sending flowers. He's sending expensive gifts for Quincy. She's trapped. She's like, I don't know what to do. She wants to go to authorities, but she's like, I can't go to them because it's like a gangster movie. Like, how high up does his power go? How high is his reach? Can anybody help me? And then she says, he found his way back to my bed. I had no choice. Then she says, the calamity that ensued behind the death of Biggie shook the East Coast. Sean could have stopped it. He was complicit in it. He was a contributor. He knew it was going to happen and he didn't stop it. And that was his friend. The song Every Step I Take is really fucked up now. Like, genuinely fucked up. Okay, one night they're out to dinner. When they're back together, they're out to dinner, and Miss Wallace walks up, who is Biggie Small's mother. And she was like, I know this isn't your problem, but things have gotten hard. I was hoping you could send some of the money that Chris made with you. Dude, this is making me really sad. Like, this is so fucked up. And then he says, that's not something I can just do. There's attorneys and accountants. Maybe I can help you with something to get you past the hump. And he goes into his wallet, takes out some money. He says, I haven't even seen how much Chris left. She's like, how long is this going to take? And he's like, I don't know. These things take time. I had no idea that he was withholding money from Biggie's family. And he's kind of like, it's not up to me. It's not it's up to the attorneys. I can't just give you money. She's like, you got rich off of my son. Now you're keeping all of his money. And he allegedly says, at the end of this, Chris probably owed me money. We won't know until it's all worked out. How fucked up is that? So she's going off about the money, and then at one point she literally looks at him and she says, did you kill my son? And she's like, answer it. And he's like, no, of course not. She's like, I don't believe you, Sean. And then Kim says, today I know he was able to muster that false sincerity because he's a sociopath, but back then I thought it was compassion. She then goes on to say, the fact of the matter is Sean was a complete control freak. She says, of all the things he's ever done for control, this would be the worst. They were in the bad boy office one evening, enjoying a meal, enjoying a cigar when Faith entered and sat down with us. I'm guessing it's Faith Evans. She also references that her, Faith, and Diddy had a threesome. And then she looks to P. Diddy and says, look, when you asked me to hook up with Chris, I understood you needed to control him. I felt honored that you would choose me to monitor one of your most valuable assets. Chris is sweet. And then he's like, I knew that you would be good at it. Make that man feel loved, whatever. And she's like, I don't feel good about this. And then she says, Chris and I had a child together. And he's like, I'm going to take care of you. Like, you don't need Chris. And then she says he didn't have to die. So now Kim is like, does she know about this? And then he's like, no, he didn't. He's like, don't get me wrong, I miss him, but he was leaving me anyway. Nobody cares about my pain. And then he says, I wanted to share all of this with him. He was my man. And Faith is pissed. And she's like, Sean, you have your friends that you share things with, but Chris had no one. He only had you. And then he loses his mind. He's like, that fat fuck, the other pieces of blah, blah, blah. Like, so Sean loses it and he's like, that fat fuck and the other piece of shit that I had you fuck. And then Kim is like, wait, hold on. And she's like, you had her hooking up with Pac? And then he's like, yeah, Pac as well, because the two of them were going to start their own label and compete with me after everything I did for them. Like, no way. And then Faith is like crying. And then like he's upset and she's comforting him and he's like, how am I the bad guy? Like, I didn't do anything but bust my ass to make everyone live comfortably, blah, blah, blah. Jesus. Okay, come back for the next part. Part 4, and before I get into it, a lot of people are saying this book and the accusations that are coming from it are insane because they're at home one night. Quincy is staying with a friend. They're having alone time and someone rings the doorbell, and who is at the door but none other than Jennifer Lopez. Please let me go on record. This is just a summary of the book that Kim Porter wrote about P. Diddy. We don't know if it's true because she's unfortunately passed away. I'm just reading what is written here, okay? So J-Lo's pissed and she's like, Sean, what the fuck? Why the hell did you have to start shooting? Isn't that what we have bodyguards for? And so Kim's kind of like, what's going on? And then J-Lo explodes and she's like, what's going on? This guy shot up a club. And Sean's like, calm down. And J-Lo's like, calm down. You shot a bunch of innocent people, Sean. she mentions at this point P. Diddy like puts his arm on J-Lo, and he's like, calm down, and she's like, this is something he does to try to like manipulate us. And then she says, why do you think Biggie's replacement will take the fall for you? And then Kim's like, Biggie's replacement, like, could she be talking about like, and then she says, are you talking about Shine? And then J-Lo's like, yeah, Shine. I'm gonna be real, I have no idea who Shine is, never heard of him, just Googled him. I don't think he ever got very big. And then she says that somebody contacted her attorney for a statement. So she's like, this is not under control, dude. Like, because I was a witness and you're not going to get away with it. So I guess like the shooting in the club, they're going to try to put it on Shine. And she's like, what if halfway through his sentence he starts talking? She's like, no one's going to be that loyal to you. And he's like, I won't do that. And then J-Lo's like, so you're going to kill him too? Bro, how many people know about this? And he's like, don't worry, Shine is smart and loyal. He knows that it's going to pay off like when he gets to the end of this. Is this true? Yeah, it's true. Shine, a former protege of Combs, was sentenced in 2001 to 10 years in jail for an assault conviction stemming from a 1999 nightclub shooting in New York that involved Combs and his then-girlfriend J-Lo. Bro, what? Combs was acquitted in the widely publicized case. Did I live under a rock? I've never heard of this. J-Lo's like, they want to question me. I'm not perjuring myself. I'm not going to go to jail over this. And J-Lo's like, how do you know? And he's like, well, he's going to confess, and then the witnesses are going to confirm, so they won't need anything else. And then he's like, all we need is a statement from your attorney. And J-Lo's like, my attorney's great, but he's not going to like blatantly lie. Like, he won't do this. And then P. Diddy's like, yeah, he will. And then Kim's like, you were going to make Shine the label's go-to man. What are you going to do now? And he's like, artists with his talent are a dime a dozen. And then she says he tried to make a threesome happen that night and it didn't happen. Like, again, I know all of this is alleged, but like, are we going to pretend that Usher didn't delete like 600 tweets last night? Like, I feel as though... What's more likely, that this has happened and that the people around Kim Porter are scared for their lives and saying that it's not true, or that it's not true? What do you think is actually more likely here? So then she finds out she's pregnant with P. Diddy's baby. She's immediately like, I'll get rid of it. Like, she's afraid he's going to be mad, but he's actually super hype, and he calls his bestie Will Smith immediately to tell him. She's like, I was in shock, he wasn't mad. Damn, this fucking poor woman. And then he's like, oh, we're going to do like a gender reveal party, blah, blah, blah. And then he says, we're going to do all the parties, but everyone is going to want to sleep with you right before you give birth. And she's like, everyone's going to want to what? And he's like, well, yeah, like a lot of people, like Will, Jada, the blank person from earlier. And she's like crying, and she's like, I don't want that. And he's like, yeah, you're gonna. He's like, I never ask anything of you, but I need you to do this. Cause like, I don't know, it's like hot to hook up with a pregnant person. Like, it's for like a spiritual thing, like some sort of like ceremony, spiritual ceremony or something involving a pregnant. She's like, but I don't believe in all this spiritual crazy shit. Like, we got here because you're brilliant, not because of the sex parties. And he's like, do you trust me? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, then let's just do what we got to do to keep having what we have. Like, so like the sex parties are also like spiritual, weird Illuminati stuff. She says, that night I cried myself to sleep. I was going to be at 9 months pregnant. My child is going to have a good biblical name. They're not going to take his soul. Like, I don't know how this managed to stay out of the media for so long, but Sean got to the point where he was so abusive and only his inner circle knew about it. Apparently she did some acting and she had like coffee with the producer, and the producer sent flowers to the house and said like in a card, like, it was so nice to meet you, we should do it again. He freaks out and like smacks the shit out of her, and he's like, you've had my baby, you can't do anything without me knowing. And she's like, it was just a producer. And he's like, who's this producer? He's throwing shit, flipping tables. And then he hits her with a chair. He takes a chair and hits her with it. She doesn't remember anything. She wakes up in a hospital room, her arms in a cast, hanging from a sling, her face hurts, eyebrows in immense pain. Yeah, and when she wakes up, Sean is there with her. He's like, I'm sorry. She's like, get away from me. And she's like, save it for the lawyers, that they're in a private room, so even if she like screams, who's gonna help her? He's like, stay away from my kids, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you're gonna use the kids against me. And then he goes, tell them what? That you had a car accident? They'll pity you that you hit your head. He was going to make her look crazy. He spent the next 6 months helping her heal, working his way back into her life and into her bed. She said, I was so stupid. Girl. And then it says, from what I understand, the producer died of pneumonia. I have chills. Next chapter starts. Sean kept his word, for the most part, until he didn't. She ended up pregnant again. He wanted energy from that too, so I guess that's what they were doing, like gang-banging a pregnant person to take the energy of the baby. He was like, this is going to be my last party, okay? Like, my body's never going to do this. Like, not allow so many people to do this to my body again. She says, whenever I try dating somebody else, they would end up dead from pneumonia. Dude, have we fact-checked this? She says she has a plan, but it's dangerous. He has a vault where he keeps the videotapes of all of his conquests. I started sleeping with him again, and after he falls asleep, I would go into the vault, take some of the tapes, make copies, swap them, etc. Took her weeks to do this, but she finally has them all, and this is her way out. I think this is the part that you guys have mostly been waiting for. Some of the tapes had things I would have never expected. The gay parties are one thing, but the young boys, like Usher, Little Bow Wow, and Justin Bieber. Oh my God. She literally said the name. She said the name. I thought it was going to be X'd out for sure. I thought for sure. Oh my. And then she said, is he grooming Quincy also, her son? I cannot believe that name is typed out in letters. Okay, come back for the next part. So where we left off, she made copies of everything, of all the videos of him and all these people. And so she invites him over one day to confront him and to break up with him. Kimura is there when this is happening. So he walks into the house and she's like, we're done. And he's like, excuse me. And she's like, we're done. And he's like, no. And she's like, I have the footage, Sean. And he starts looking confused. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, and then Kim says, Usher too. And then he's like, wait, what the fuck is going on? He's getting pissed. And Kimura's like, don't make me call the cops. And then Kim Porter says, if anything happens to either of us, it gets released. He starts to walk out of the house, and then he turns and lunges at her, and he knocks her down near the top of the stairs. As he began to crouch over me, I kicked him, hitting him in the kneecap and then his face. He went tumbling down the stairs. He was too hurt to get up. I called the cops. Kim left before they arrived. When he left, it was in an ambulance. I want to quickly fact-check this. Turns out Googling Sean Combs and hospitalized doesn't give you the results that you want because there's too many. She says, after this, things were okay for a while. She started dating someone, got serious, and then he died of pneumonia. Dude. She says, when this happened, when her most recent ex-boyfriend passed from pneumonia, she knew it was him, and that's when she decided to write this book. She says her home was robbed, laptops were stolen, and she knows that it's him trying to find the copy of all these videos, but she has them stored in the cloud. And she says she's going to send copies of this out to people with her Google Drive password, so that way the missing chapters can be accessed, that this has to get out. There's so many more chapters to add. And then she says she's not feeling very well. She called Kimura to cancel plans, and when she spoke to her, Kimura says, girl, that doesn't sound like the flu. You want to go to the hospital? And she was like, that didn't immediately alarm me. I just need some rest. But why can't I get my doctor? Why won't her doctor pick? She can't get her doctor on the phone. So she eventually just calls Sean himself because, like, she needs help. On the phone, he says to her, I have your kids. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the kids are with me. And so she's like, did you ever love me? And he replies and says, the most important thing to me in the world is loyalty. And then she says he puts on a fake voice and he's like, Kim, is something wrong? This is sick. Now she's saying, like, I shouldn't have threatened him. I should have just published the book. She's like, I'm gonna die like Heavy D, like Biggie, like Pac, like so many others. And then before hanging up, she says, that's not the only copy, you fuck. And then she shot out a group text to let everyone know he got me. And then I called 911. As I sit here waiting for the ambulance, I am writing this chapter and praying that I make it to the hospital. I don't feel like writing anymore. I may not be around to see it print. It's okay. I'm sending it out. He won't get away with this. I will have my say, my final words. Sean Combs will get exposed, even if I lose my life doing it. My kids have always been my most cherished possessions. I want the world to know that. But more importantly, I want them to know. I think that's just how it ends. Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot. As I said, we don't know if this is true or not. The only people who will know it's true are the people involved, but there's clearly a stack of evidence against this person for him to be in the position that he's in right now. I'm inclined to believe that it's more likely to be true than not. And if it is, there's not a prison sentence long enough for, I mean, oh my God. And like, there's a lot of like loose ends, like in the book, Pac is still alive, but like we know that he isn't, right? And like that stuff with Jay-Z, like it's just alluded to. Like there's clearly a lot a lot more that we don't know. I'm sorry, like, I'm not good at words right now. I feel like I'm kind of in shock because that had a lot more than what I thought it was going to. Okay, so yeah, thanks for riding along with me. Now you don't have to search on the internet for or wait for people to give you weird summaries that don't actually include everything. That is everything that's in that book, okay? Okay, bye.